Hi, welcome back to Regular. Today I'm going to talk about what type of gamer are you, and what I mean by that is that are you predominantly a wargamer, are you predominantly a board gamer, RPG player, card game player, or are you a mixture of everything? So I started thinking about this, and it was basically, what type of gamer am I? Am I predominantly a wargamer? I mean, most of the content I make is predominantly war games. But I mean, if you can look behind there, there's a raft of different types of games. Now I do have RPG stuff. I do have board games, card games. I have some card games. I'm not a big card game player. I used to be. I used to be into Magic a lot. I'm not so much into it anymore. A few years back, I got rid of all my cards. I just sold them en masse on eBay. It's probably a big mistake. There's probably quite a few in there that were worth a bit of money. So whoever bought them may have got some really nice cards that were worth a few quid. But I would predominantly say I'm a war gamer. And I would say predominantly historical, both maths, battle and skirmish. I don't really have a preference. I'm quite happy to sort of play a mass battle game or a skirmish game. You know, and when I say skirmish, I mean as small as like gang size, sort of like Gangs of Rome, that sort of size, or Necromunda if I'm playing sci-fi, right through to sort of mid sort of range sort of games like Bolt Action and Saga, and then I'm quite willing to sit down and play mass battle in say 10mm or 15mm, ancients or medieval or even fantasy. Now I like board games, but I came to realise that most of the board games I have are miniature based. I'm probably not big on non-miniature based board games, and I think that's because I like the practical side of the hobby. I like the painting, I like the building of terrain and stuff like that, which is what you get with war games. And so I kind of, when I go towards a board game, it probably has to have some element of that, which will, in most cases will be miniatures, and I'll paint the miniatures for those board games. I have played role play games, and I occasionally dip into role play games. I used to be into it a lot bigger when I was younger. I don't really. I think more of a case of time is the issue now these days. But it's like I was looking at things like the UK Games Expo and stuff like that, shows like that, and now I didn't go this year, but I've been to previous years, and it got me thinking: is it worth me going next year when it really doesn't cater for what I'm really into? Now, don't get me wrong. I find going when I have been in the past, I find it quite interesting looking around different stuff, bits and pieces like the board games and stuff like that were there, and looking at stuff I probably wouldn't bother to look at normally because it doesn't really interest me. But then I was like, but is it worth going? Is it worth taking a trip down to Birmingham to a show that predominantly doesn't cater for my interest? Because in the past there was never enough to interest me, especially in purchasing. I never made big purchases at Games Expo in the past. In fact, most years I came away with barely anything at all. So that made me thinking, well, what type of gamer am I? Am I a war gamer? Am I a card gamer? Well, I'm definitely not a card gamer. I don't really play card games these days anymore. So And there's nothing wrong with just being a card gamer. I don't see anything wrong with that. It's another part of the hobby. It just doesn't interest me. And am I an RPG player? Well, like, not really. If I'm honest, I dip into it and I don't mind playing a game of it. And I've got several RPGs on the shelves, and I quite like being a game master. And that's what I predominantly did when I was playing D&D. Was I was game master or dungeon master, whatever you want to call it. But it's not my bag. It's not my first go-to bag. And then I'm like, well, does the board game do I play enough board game to sort of to make Games Expo or any show that's multiple different tabletop gaming have enough to pull me? I'm like, not really, to be honest, because most of the board games I play are miniature based, and I'm a war gamer that dabbles in other bits and pieces, and that's probably how I see myself. And I like the hobby side of stuff, the painting and the construction of terrain. And I guess that's what most people, then they call themselves a gamer, hobby. They're probably in one aspect of the hobby, or maybe one or two, but with a predominant sort of area. Like they might be a card gamer, but they dabble in a bit of RPG, and occasionally will play a board game with friends. But their bag is like cards, collecting the cards, trying to get those really powerful cards, and building up a really cool deck, and playing the games. But that's not what I am. And then I like war games. And when I say war games, I predominantly like historical. But that's because I like the research. I like reading of the books, finding out about battles, how those battles were played out by both competing armies, looking at the equipment used and the fighting styles and formations and stuff like that, and then looking at the social history around that, the military aspect, and that's what pulls me. I mean, I like fantasy, I like sci-fi because I grew up playing it, but that's my pure bag is historical. I'm a historical wargamer that dabbles in other bits and bobs, and I feel that in the hobby we look down on other parts. So I was like, people, oh, it's a card player, cards. I don't see why we do that, because that's just another aspect of the hobby, and their bag is cards. And they do, and board gamers and war gamers, they all look at each other like different from another planet, when reality is we're all tabletop gamers. We just like our interests differently. Some people like counter-based war games. The traditional ones that used to be from Avalon Hill. I played those in the past, but it doesn't really appeal to me. I'll happily play it, but it doesn't appeal to me. I prefer, fielding these little guys on the table instead of cards. So I was just wondering, people's thoughts around the type of wargaming. Yeah, so that's what I'm kind of like looking at. What type of gamer are you, and what's your bag, and what's the bits you prefer playing, or what sort of draws you in. For me, it's wargaming, but I will dabble in other areas. Play a bit of this and play a bit of that, but predominantly wargame. Skirmish or mass battle, I don't really care, how long as it's got painted miniatures. Anyway, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.